everybody, welcome back to my channel where I talk about autism from the point of being autistic. Hi everybody, we have a little guest today. He's being extra nosy over here in my little space, but he's happy, aren't you, bud? So today we're going to talk about info dumping. So info dumping is pretty much exactly what it sounds like. It's when you're giving too much info at the same time, given with too much excitement about a specific focus or passion. It can also be like, in particular, very TMI. Okay, like there's a lot of us that tend to give out too much about our traumas or our bodily functions and with somebody that doesn't really know us a lot yet, but it's not just TMI information. Excuse me, sir, I need my notebook. Excuse me. So being autistic and neurodivergent comes with hyperfixations and special interest. I've already talked about special interest in a past video and more specific, so if you want to go back to that, if you're not sure what special interests are. With that, we tend to research everything about these topics. It's whether something we really love, or we buy everything that has to do with anything about this particular topic. So with that, of course, we're going to get overly excited. So if somebody, especially if we struggle with social aspects, if we hear somebody that happens to mention anything about our special interest where we know a lot about it and it makes us so full of joy, we can tend to overdominate conversations because of this. And that can be really off-putting for someone who isn't equally into that particular subject, or they aren't interested in it whatsoever. There's also the aspect that a lot of us can't separate acquaintances from coworkers, and we tend to mix the two together and assume that like pretty much anybody that interacts with us is our friend. So we tend to share a lot of TMI, bodily, medical issues with people we shouldn't, because we'll see them as friends and we'll share with them, and we don't understand that they're not actually friend status. Of course, the right people will let you info dump. A majority of us that are autistic or ADHD or any other type of neurodivergent is usually okay with it. It lets us know we must be friends if you're telling us all this information you know about a topic. I personally never discourage anybody from info dumping to me. Like, even if it's something that I don't have a personal interest in, because I know I've personally been there where I have something that I'm info dumping about that is a huge interest of mine, and I've been made fun of, I've been told to shut up, and I would never want to do that to another person. And I know with the aspect of not understanding if it's an acquaintance or a coworker, I never really thought about it until I started seeing people talk about this in videos and in groups that I'm in online, and I'm like, oh yeah, I definitely have trouble with that, especially like I have talked about on my channel, I grew up not having a lot of friends, right? And so I do mix up the fact that, like, if somebody I'm seeing constantly throughout my life, like a coworker or whatnot, and we're friendly with each other, I will assume that that also makes us close friends. And so sometimes I might be divulging information that maybe I shouldn't, because I assume that because I see you every day and that we get along, that that naturally makes us friends, which is not always the case. That is for like a lot of people, right? Because like if you're like me in particular, I work and then that's it. Like that's my main aspect of being out in socializing. So I assume that you're more than a coworker if we're together long enough and we get along. So with that, of course, has come some issues like in the past, like where I would think that these coworkers are my close friends, and then that work dynamic comes into play and I find out that they're not my friend, depending on the circumstance and the work area. Because I've had that definitely come to bite me in the butt, especially when it comes to being too personable. Like, especially like in a time when it was right in the time where I left my abusive ex, I was really falling apart mentally because I had to keep working. Like, I couldn't just stop working and have a mental breakdown, as a lot of us have experienced. Especially with late diagnosed, a lot of us have realized that in times we're mentally breaking down, but we're pushing through it. A lot of people don't understand that, and then people wonder why we are burnt out. And during that time, I was really a mess for a lot of part. Like, I was able to do my job, but like I would fall apart in like in between times of doing things, and like people took advantage of that and wanted to think that I couldn't do my job, which is not true. My job has always been like something that keeps me sane and happy. And I'm really thankful though I had my job during that time, because if I didn't, I would have fallen back and backtracked and wouldn't be where I am today. So like in aspects, like I had a lot of trouble during that time, but in other aspects, like I'm really grateful. I had a really understanding boss in that time. Honestly, those were my best bosses I had ever had. And yeah, I might not have realized it till after I had left and I didn't have them as bosses anymore. But yeah, info dumping, it is very interesting, and it's one of those things where it's like, yes, can a neurotypical autistic person info dump? Absolutely. They just have a better filter of knowing when it's appropriate and when it's not. So if you're autistic or neurotypical and you're info dumping about an interest, you usually are better about knowing who and who you shouldn't. Whereas we do not care as long as somebody seems they're interested in talking to us. Because I know, like, especially from personal experience, like me info dumping too, whether or not I feel that you're a safe person or not, if I'm interested in you and I'm hoping that we can be closer as friends or something, I will info dump, because that's my way of being like, hey, this is what I like. This is what I'm all about. And did you talk about Pokemon? Well, guess what? I love them. Oh, you like spooky stuff and really, really creepy things? Me too. Let's talk about it for hours. And some people don't like that, you know? And so that's another reason why we have so much trouble with friendships and knowing how to interact, because we don't have that filter. Allistics and neurotypicals have the filter. We do not. We don't recognize who is correct and who isn't. Like, sometimes I might understand, like, oh yeah, I probably shouldn't talk about how much pain I'm in, I want to die. Like, not always the best thing to bring up in just random conversation. Um, but it's also one of those things where it kind of intertwines with being disabled, and where I will feel like, when am I supposed to bring this up? When are the appropriate times to be like, hey, I have a lot of pain, or hey, I have a lot of issues with how my brain works. It's a sticky, tricky situation, because also sometimes when you're trying to advocate for yourself in circumstances like that, people will use it against you, and that really sucks. But that could be a whole nother video, right? Because that's a whole thing. Like, knowing what is appropriate, even in a job setting, of how to advocate for yourself. Which, even so, I think no matter what, that's a topic that all of us will always struggle with, because even though a person or even a job facility will be like, hey, I'm all for the rights of disabled people, and please talk to us about this, and then you do, and then it's like, well, then why are you friends with me? Or why are you in this job? And yeah, it's just one of those other things where it's like, this world's just not quite made for us, unfortunately. It's just sometimes, it takes time to know what is appropriate and what is not, and that can be super difficult. But that's all I have today. I know this was kind of a short one, and I probably talked really fast, so hopefully you understood and you're able to soak it all in. I will see you guys in the next video, and I hope you guys have a good week. Bye.